So, hello, friends. Welcome once again to the Weekly High with LHD show. Along with my co host, L. Subramaniam Subbu, as he's fondly known. We have this week with us Srinivas Prasad, an innovation and transformation leader. He was the former CEO of Philips Innovation Campus, a former state and India cricketer, and a member of the CIA National Committee on Technology and R&D. Of course, while his domain expertise lies in tech and healthcare, having invested so many years in that sector, but he can talk with equal facility on philosophy, Vedanta, and of course. Um, but before we pick his brains on the subject, let us discuss some important tech developments of this week. The first being, of course, that Jeff Bezos has handed over charge of Amazon to Andy Jassy. And the second part is that US leads the world's AI race, followed by China and the EU, according to the Center for Data Innovation, the latest report from these guys. The question, of course, is whether India can become an AI superpower because India has been talking about this a lot. Let's tackle the first question. Subbu, Srinivas, welcome once again. And these are the kind of tech developments that we have of the week. Jeff Bezos giving charge to Andy Jassy. I think that was expected, but uh, let's talk a little bit about the kind of implications that you guys see. Will Amazon remain the Amazon it was? Because we've had these kind of things with Yahoo, for instance, when Jerry Yang left. Okay,
Yep.
when Larry Page and Sergey Brin gave charge to Sundar Pichai, of course, again we had a question when Sundar Pichai took over as Microsoft CEO from Steve Ballmer. Those questions were again raised. But the pattern that I've also written about this for CXO Today, which is our sister concern, that basically all those who are in the cloud, who are cloud leaders, have become CEOs. So digital transformation, cloud, exactly, these are like paying dividends, which is but natural. What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
no, I think when a leader is at the helm for such a long time, for the company to take the next step, I truly believe a change is required. And I think this, the way I see it, this is actually a welcome change. And because if you look at Jesse, he's been the sort of the father of the AWS business, within Amazon.
Absolutely.
And I think it contributes to almost 45% of their bottom line, the operating
Just a
profit
little less
percent.
than half. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah. And I think the
it's
biggest
bigger
challenge
than
is
it's
that
bigger than Oracle, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
absolutely,
Absolutely. Easily within this.
absolutely. And if you look at the Indian market itself, I think it's the second largest market for Amazon globally.
Uh,
Uh, I think it's the second largest
yeah,
market.
it is, I think so.
And given the change that they want to bring in the new areas like healthcare, etc., they want to get into. I think that's a good challenge to have. The regulatory challenges that Amazon and a lot of other companies are facing in India, probably that'll be a cup of tea that he needs to figure out how he's going to drink.
Yeah, it's an interesting
Uh,
landscape out here because you have Reliance, Flipkart, and that point in time when they are trying to strengthen it, then you have those court cases out there, and at this point in time, Jesse coming in. So it's an interesting time for these guys.
and the issue with Future Group, I think that's not going to get resolved anytime soon. But I think the point that you made, though we have Flipkart and Reliance, etc., in the space, but I do think, if I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, uh, the e-commerce space or the online, shopping, only 20% of the market has been tapped as yet, maybe 20, 20 or 25% in India. So still there is a huge opportunity. And I think the COVID-19 pandemic last year has brought the change in the mindset of people. So I think that's a huge pie of the market that probably Jesse would be looking to grab. But I think overall, I see it as a welcome change, as far as Amazon and as far as the Indian market is concerned.
I'm just scared what Bezos is going to do after he doesn't have to manage Amazon. I mean, he's going to create another monster. I mean, just imagine this guy started from scratch, right? And he's just built this huge, colossal monster of a company, right? See, in India, I don't think nothing. I don't think anything much is going to change because the strategy is very clear, and the way Amazon works is that it's not while Bezos gives a vision and so on and so forth. They have fairly strong set of leaders in India, so nothing much is going to happen unless and until the future issue goes the other way, right? Two important things happen. One is that they got a reprieve from Delhi High Court, right? Coincidentally, it kind of it was the same day when Bezos announced that he is going to move to the chairman's role. And the second thing is the Singapore Arbitration Council is probably going to announce his decision by the end of this month, the final decision, right? And the Delhi High Court has already ruled that Singapore arbitration decision is valid. Okay, obviously there'll be appeals and so on and so forth, and so that's one piece as far as India is concerned. The other piece is that see in the overall cloud space, Amazon is extremely strong in India. AWS is very strong in India, and having built this business ground up, literally ground up. Okay, uh, I think there is going to be a renewed focus on the cloud business in India and to power cloud into the small and medium businesses, which is really the Amazon's chosen constituency, because in the retail business they already deal with millions of these guys. Okay, so for them there could be some sort of strategic fit when they move cloud into SMEs and try to displace the Googles of the world and the Microsofts of the world. Okay, that will be an interesting fight. On the retail front, like I said, it will be business as usual. They will take on Walmart. They will take on, Reliance. Uh, I just don't know whether, at the end of it all, whether future will continue to remain, because they're in a pretty bad shape financially, right? So to me, nothing is going to change in India, but I suspect that there will be some kind of a focus on the small and medium businesses as far as the AWS is concerned. You will see them fighting ferociously on the price points where Google has been traditionally very strong, right? So that could be a fairly large game that probably will happen. But like I said at the beginning,
Subbu, I'd like to interject over here because you made a very interesting point on the retail part of it, and I know you all track the e-commerce. You track the e-commerce sector very closely. But the interesting part is here that in this entire conversation, we forget there's quite a good company which is DMart, which is not exactly the poster boy of online, but it has still managed to fight these giants and really make good profits.
so DMart has followed a very interesting hyper-local strategy, and that's worked well, okay, in the past. DMart, I think, did go through a couple of structural changes in the last few years, and I think they've got their game. Okay, but let's not discount the fact that in this 1-2 game of two 700-pound gorillas, there is a 1,000-pound gorilla that is coming in, right? And clearly, like Srinivas said, see, the market has got a huge headroom for growth. Just about 200 million Indians are right now shopping online, okay, which means that the 4 times or at least a 2 times increase, 2x growth that's possible on that. Okay, 3x growth is possible. I think DMart will probably do well in the hyperlocal space, but the growth that they will see is probably going to be somewhat limited, given that there are these three giants who are going to be fighting it out. So they will remain a hyperlocal player. They'll continue to remain a hyperlocal player, but with influence waning over a period of time. I don't see them gaining influence.
Fair enough.
Just one, so just to again go back to the cloud aspect of what you mentioned. Amazon has two hats to wear. One is enabling businesses at the same time competing with them. And so I think building that trust is probably going to be the challenge, not just in India, but right across the world. Because,
Absolutely. I think they've done a fairly so till now they've done a fairly decent job. Again, it's an interesting point that you made. But so let me just break this thing into two parts. One is they are going to be enabling the businesses and also competing with them,
true.
right?
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Having said that, there is also a chunk of business where they only enable, they don't compete, right?
That's the
Now,
infrastructure part. I think we need to be very clear about the infrastructure, cloud as an
right.
infrastructure, cloud as a service, cloud. I think that distinction is important.
So that's why I said on the infrastructure side, I think they are reasonably well placed. I see them fighting more fiercely, if at all. Uh, on the retail side, the game is going to be, at least in India, the game is going to be extremely interesting because there is a bit of a symbiotic relationship that they do have, which they will try and leverage, which a Microsoft doesn't have and a Google doesn't have. So they're going to be fighting, four big competitors. On the infrastructure side, they'll be fighting Google and Microsoft. On the retail side, they'll be fighting Walmart and Reliance. Okay, and
And
I think it'll be interesting
Yeah. Yeah. It
yeah,
should
from
be
an Indian
interesting.
perspective.
and also to answer, you raised an interesting point. What is uh, Jeff Bezos going to do now?
Yeah,
So,
that's my question.
the interesting part. So, and you know the answer, and I think Srinivas also knows the answer. Basically, he has Blue Origin to play around with Elon Musk.
Yeah.
So
Ah,
No, actually,
that's
he
what.
cashed out. I think he cashed out 2 billion of his stock last year sometime.
Yeah. No,
And the
but
share
I'm
price.
saying, so there's Elon Musk and there's Jeff Bezos. They're going to play around with their space shuttles. And of course, remember that Google has discontinued the Loon project,
yeah.
balloon project. So these are very interesting kind of playouts. But let's see where
But
it
he's
is.
still the executive chairman, Leslie.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yes, yes,
And,
he
and
is. He
yes,
is.
yeah,
yes,
so it
very much.
depends
He's
on
not
how
left.
hands off he's going to be.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Well,
Well,
okay.
well,
That's
let's
that's
not.
a that's a billion
Let's
dollar question.
a billion dollar
Just
question.
one thing I would just want to add in this is that if you notice in the last 6 months, Bezos has been dropping money into a whole different sets of companies.
Yeah, true.
He just dropped $40 million into another content company, right? And I think the amount of war chest that he has got, okay, and the fact that he's now relatively free of Amazon on a day-to-day basis, which is why I said that I'm scared as to what kind of new monster he's going to create now. So he's got time on his hands and he's got money on his hands. And
No,
that's a potent combination.
but
Yeah,
let's
true.
be charitable out here. Maybe he might create something good also, because like Larry Page and Sergey Brin have been doing a lot of other stuff. Uh, Alphabet is doing a lot of innovative
I
work.
didn't
Yes,
say
I
monster, it's
think
a
he
bad,
might.
I didn't say it's a bad monster.
Monster always has a negative connotation.
Oh, come on. I mean, look at the beauty and the beast. The beast is probably
Oh
more lovable
my!
than the beauty. Right?
Again,
True, very true.
yeah. So, Srinivas, before we sort of segue into the second major tech development of the week, because that's a dense topic, I want to ask you one thing. You were a state level cricketer. You have played for the Ranji, if I'm not mistaken, and Young India thing. So, can you tell us why did you give up cricket? And I mean, and where you have Subbu out here who loves cricket, and he may want to ask you all that.
Like a billion other people in this country.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. That actually brings back very nostalgic memories. And like Leslie, it was really an honor, to play for the country. I think it was 1983. I think it was called Young India or India Under 25. Just I actually forget. And it had Ravi was the captain, and Chika, Shrikant, and the whole gang. Except the 4 or 5 big stalwarts like Rishi, Gavaskar, Kapil, Mohinder, and I think somebody else was missing from the team. It was the first tour to Zimbabwe. I think it was a goodwill tour from India to Zimbabwe when Rhodesia became Zimbabwe, and it was actually we met Mugabe. We had a dinner which I'll never forget.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
And I'll share with you the details of the dinner offline some other time. And yeah, played for the state, I think from 1979 to 88. And
Okay.
your question, Leslie, why did I stop? They dropped me for a game. and I had both my careers going, so it made my choice easier. So I had to make a choice. I was
Now,
27.
I'm
But
glad for
there's a
AI.
large number of cricketers. I think Anil Kumble was an engineer.
Yeah,
Prasanna was an engineer. Chika was an engineer,
yeah,
right? So from the south, I see this trend of people pursuing their education and cricket simultaneously, and then making a choice at some stage, right?
absolutely, absolutely. No,
So
yeah,
you were a part of the Ranji team which played that epic Delhi game, right?
absolutely. The
Huh?
epic Delhi game, which all of us want to forget. And by the way, Subbu, we also played that epic Mumbai game, final 1983, where
83, yeah.
Mumbai scored 530 or 540, and we won that game.
Yeah, I know. Because
I remember
I was
only
watching the Delhi game.
oh, you
Raman
were.
You know,
Lamba.
I'm going to interrupt both of you because I know if I get into this discussion of cricket, it will last for at least 2-3 hours. So
Yeah, but
I'm
I
going to
say
ask
very
you.
strong objection to what you said earlier, Leslie. You said that we are getting into dense topic, so let us lighten up with cricket. No, cricket is a very serious topic.
Very
No,
serious
but
topic.
that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it. So now I'm going to ask you, Srinivas, the
Yeah.
cricket that you played in 1983 and the cricket that is being played today with data analytics, the whole AI-powered kind of cricket. I want to ask you a little about that because I'm sure you're tracking all that kind of stuff. The kind of stuff that when you all play with the raw cricketing power today, like you look at the entire matches, you study all the stuff. How do you find that big? Is it a very radical difference? Is
I
it
wish
going
I
to?
played 30 years later. No, those days, to be honest with you, our analytics and our eyes were our partner, and the runner who was on the other side of, he would actually, that's the way we would work. I mean, if we played a long stroke, we would have Vishy or somebody walking up and saying, hey, look, your bat is not coming down the right way, or even vice versa. I remember a game when, Vishy played a wrong stroke, and the humility of the man, the humbleness of the man, he came back to me, came up to me and asked me, what did I do wrong? For a second, I was taken aback. And, in those days, I'll tell you another thing that I did. I remember this very, very well. It was, I think, my second game or third game, and, Kapil and Yograj were the stalwarts in India. They came back from the Pakistan tour, and they were really quick. And it was a game at Bangalore against Haryana. And I didn't know. So actually, fortunate to watch a couple of videos of Kapil and the way he slightly changes his action when he gets the ball in. And that worked. Right? I mean, today, you have AI, and for example, Kumble's, 10 week has actually worked together with Microsoft to have a sensor in the bat where actually you can, help, and really track the way you're playing and actually help you to improve your stroke play.
But your competitors are also tracking you.
Yeah, true.
Everybody's watching your game.
No, true. But the analytics and the amount of information data that you have today, but I think there is a lot more interpretation that can be done, and ultimately I don't want it to become a game where it's more about technology than the game.
Yeah,
Then the whole fun
exactly.
is lost. Then the whole
I,
fun
al-
is lost.
I always thought the Greeks always played a better game. I mean,
But,
I wasn't there 2,000 years back. All the same.
but Srinivas, just tell me, was it that time Sanjay Parsadi also a part of the Tamil Nadu team? The guy who later on went on to head Microsoft in India.
No, I didn't play against him.
Sanjay Pat was not there.
No.
Okay.
It was Mo Parsarthi was part of the team, if you remember. Not Sanjay Parsarthi.
Okay.
Great. So now that we have had a conversation, I know this can go on for too long. So let's get on to this second tech development of the week. So I'm going to just share a couple of screens. According to the Center for Data Innovation, these are numbers from there, that US, according to the recent report, US leads the world's AI race, followed by China and the European Union. Of course, the question that comes to our mind immediately is, can India become an AI superpower, given the kind of emphasis that India is laying down with the Niti Aayog report, and Prime Minister Modi has been talking about making India an AI hub, basically. But we'll come to that in a bit. about a little about the report. In 2019, the Center for Data Innovation, it analyzed the AI capabilities of China, the European Union, and the US. They used 30 metrics, and these were across 6 categories. I know there are only 5 categories here because what they do is they take talent, research, and development are 2 separate categories. So they take talent, research, development, hardware because of the GPUs and all that kind of stuff, servers, etc. The adoption, and hardware would also include your supercomputers, and then your data. So these are the kind of 6 categories. They found out that, I mean, according to their data, the US led in 4 categories: talent, R&D, and hardware. China led in 2, adoption and data. The parameters that are dealt with, just for the discussion purposes, one is the number of research papers that come out from any particular country, but it's not only quantity; it's also about quality of the research. Then the total R&D spending of software and computer services firms, the number of firms designing AI chips in any specific country, and the number of supercomputers, and the last point, which I think Srinivas will be very happy about, health data. So that is something that is his expertise also. But given these kind of parameters, what is interesting is whether India has a chance of becoming an AI superpower. Means even, see, we are all patriotic. I love the fact that India talks about AI. I'm super excited about this ending, and I know the kind of stuff that a lot of companies are doing here. But whether we come in this kind of a league, because if you look at the numbers, a number of supercomputers, for instance, India is practically nowhere in that particular top ranking. It's either India, it's either the US, it's either China. Even if you talk on the number of research papers, you talk about the quality and the quantity of research papers, you talk about the R&D kind of capabilities. There also India falls pretty short. So, Srinivas, I want to ask you this question because you are like there, you have done a lot of work, and I know that Philips and most of the multinationals here do a lot of work. What gets you excited about AI, and what do you see the kind of prospects when we talk about AI and India?
Actually, very interesting points that you shared on your slides, Leslie. I mean, let me just step back a bit. Huh? We lost the semiconductor wave in the late 70s, right? I mean, due to whatever reason, we lost that opportunity to have all the semiconductor companies, manufacturing in India. And I think if we don't move very quickly, I think we will lose the AI space too, because you spoke about China, you spoke about US, etc. And those are the way I see it, these are 2 different markets with regards to data privacy, right? I mean, China, you don't have a choice, whether you want it or not. You can aggregate the data and do whatever you want with it. You have the US, on the other hand, where there are very stringent data privacy laws, very stringent regulatory laws that are there. For example, if you take recently, I think last year sometime, FDA brought out the new framework for a medical device, AI software related medical device, in terms of the approval process and what needs to be done, right across diagnostics, treatment, etc., etc. If you look at Europe itself, you have the GDPR regulations there, right? That's going to also put a constraint on them in terms of how they're going to share data, use data, etc. But let's come to India.
No, but 1 second. Before you come to India, I think you raised some very valid points, because this is exactly what is, even the Center for Data Innovation has actually pointed that out. That basically, if the lead that the US has had up till now traditionally, the European Union probably may never catch up with China, because of the privacy laws, because it is stifling innovation, stifling in, because that it has to, it's just trying to strike that balance between data, privacy, and all. Whereas, as you rightly said, that China doesn't, let's say, give a fig as far as that is concerned. So yes, that is a very big issue. And about supercomputers, I think both Subbu and Will also, we have talked about this on the earlier episode also. 2 or 3 major problems. I personally don't see India coming up with any kind of semiconductor, not at the range that is required for AI. because I think you have gone down to 4 nanometers and all that kind of stuff. So you require investment of almost like three to anywhere between $3 and $6 billion.
Yeah.
You require a lot of pure water, which is not a and you require a lot of land. So I'm not too sure how
that game is over. I think the semiconductor game is over.
Exactly.
I don't think we should labor that.
Yeah.
I think from the AI perspective also, see, if you look, you listed all the parameters. If you look at the parameters, we are nowhere in the game,
nowhere.
right? Now, what might happen is that we may become the largest free market for AI powered solutions, which will be created by these companies, the multinational companies. Now, would you call that in India become an AI superpower? I don't think so. So the Philips of the world, the IBMs of the world, they will be the ones who will be creating the solutions for India, and they could be India-specific solutions. I have no problem with that. But when you say superpower, you're talking about creating a ecosystem which fosters that kind of a solutioning. I don't see that happening. I mean, look at your R&D spend as a percentage of GDP.
Yeah,
it
so
is less than 1%.
Subbu, let me give you some numbers here out here, because so the number I'm again the source is again the Center for Data Innovation. So the number of research I think China has 24,929 research papers. Okay? European Union 20,480. United States 16,233. Of course, what the Center of Data Innovation does, it takes it also per 1 million workers. It says, okay, US has 98.1 papers according to per million workers, whereas EU would have 81 and China would have something like 32. But then it talks about the quality of research, where the US led the European Union 1.1, China 0.8, and so essentially the quality basically clearly the US is ahead of China. Total R&D spending of software and computer services, we see that there were 288 software and computer services firms in the global top 2,500 firms for R&D spending in 2009. And out of that, US has invested about 124.5 billion, China 23.7 billion, EU 14.6 billion. And if you look at the number of firms designing AI chips, which both of you have just mentioned that these are important points and which we all agree, is that US has at least 62 firms developing AI chips compared with 29 firms in China, 14 in the European Union. Look at supercomputers, China 214, US 113, European Union 91. Okay. And so these are the kind of numbers that we're talking about at any given point.
To that point, Leslie, I mean, I agree, Subbu, with what you said, that we are way behind in the race. But looking at the positive side of it, at least there is some understanding and focus to say, hey, look here, the semiconductor, quantum computing, AI, among other things, are going to be key focus areas of the government. But I think the issue is in the execution of the plan, right? I mean, and again, if you go back, I think it's first to understand as to why we got to where we are because of what we did in the past. Now, even if you look at AI, the Indian software or technology industry is more or less an export industry.
Exactly. It's a services industry.
And having been in that space all these years, there was a lot of push that we would do with our counterparts in the, wherever we worked with Japan, Netherlands, US, etc., to develop a product, whether it's an AI-related product or a hardware product, etc., and with embedded AI, to develop a product for India. But always there was a question of, are the volumes big enough to justify the product, just to be developed for keeping India in mind? So one of the things that many of these companies do, which I think is something to learn from, to see how India can take off from where we are, is to look at a global problem, but look at a local implementation of the solution, but by taking a platform approach, whereby you can actually scale the solution to other countries. And that actually leads me into this, to the startup. That's where the whole change needs to happen, because the Indian service industry, we as it is call it a service industry, right?
It is a services industry.
Yeah, they're wonderful. They do a great job. Whether you take Infosys, they take TCS, etc., they do a great job. But the whole intent is to service other companies, right? And the amount of business that they have from their own products, which have been developed for the local market itself, is very low. So that mindset needs to change. Saying, hey, look here, developing something for the local market, in the AI space, is going to make business sense.
But Srinivas, aren't we already doing that? Because I think even the focus of the Niti Aayog paper and the kind of stuff that is there's clearly on agriculture, on healthcare, and you are very much enmeshed in that. And I think that's a very sensible kind of approach. That okay, I'll become a leader in the AI application space because I have so much to contribute.
No, but the issue there is, I think they're not taking a holistic view, in my view, right? Because you have somebody looking at a problem, only in that enclosed box that they're looking at, but not looking at the bigger picture in terms of where the solution fits in. And I've spoken to several startups. I've been speaking with them. I've been spoken to them earlier. The whole buzzword is AI. So everybody goes with the AI hammer to actually find a problem, right? It should be the other way around. Asking the question whether this problem requires an AI solution. Whether it's in the HR space, whether it is in in the process automation space, whether it's in the device space, etc. The issue that I see is people need to think big, right? And of course you have some wonderful startups like you take in the healthcare space. Niramai, have you heard of it?
Yes. Yep.
Wonderful. This lady, who when they started off,
Geeta Manjunath.
Yeah, absolutely right. And nobody believed that thermal imaging. When I was talking with our so-called research people internally, within the research community, nobody ever believed that thermal imaging would lead us to, where we are, right? I think we need more people like this. So again, it goes back to the culture, goes back to the way we think, goes back to how we make people believe in themselves and to think bigger. I don't know if you could add, and if you agree with me on those aspects.
No. I see. As an entrepreneur, the biggest issue that I find here is that we don't celebrate failures.
True.
Because in a product space, especially in cutting edge space, you're going to have failures. And create where, the failure is not looked down upon, you're never going to have successes. And that has been my refrain for the last so many years.
Subbu, 1 second, please.
If you're going to develop products for India,
I think for the last 2-3 minutes, almost a minute, I think your image was frozen. So you probably want to repeat that.
So I'm saying that the problem with our like you said, mindset, and you said with the way we look at things, right? I think we have to start from the fact that as an entrepreneur, it is okay to fail.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I've been an entrepreneur now for so many years. Okay, and I see the kind of reception that one gets when you're not, a multi-billion-dollar startup. Okay, because a product space, a cutting-edge technology product space, is going to have repeated failures. We have to learn to accept that. Until you don't accept that, it is going to be very difficult for you to create Niramai, duplicates.
But Srinivas, I mean, the interesting part here out is that I know that you have done some real good stuff. I've been on the innovation campus with you. We have discussed machine learning, AI at length. When you look at the healthcare space, which is your domain expertise, let's just look at that healthcare space for now and just talk a little bit about what is the kind of progress that India has made in AI, when we talk about AI and healthcare. Because I'm talking of this in the context of COVID, for instance. I think there are some companies here in India and startups that have used these the analytics data out here, have created for the vaccines basically also. Globally, yes, clearly a lot of predictive AI has been used. And I think they had already sent out an alert. It was a Canadian company that had sent out an alert already to its clients saying that, yes, there's COVID in Wuhan, so you should be careful. And similarly, a lot of stuff has been happening over. So when you look at India, AI and healthcare, where are we? What more can be done?
I think we are not where we should be. Yeah, the point number one. Point number two is I think the initiatives from the government to take us forward in the right direction and accelerate I think many of those things are in place. But like I said earlier, we need to see how that, those are enabled and enforced, for example. And let me come one by one. I think there are 3 or 4 areas where AI can be directly applied and used with a lot of benefits in India in the healthcare space. Probably the first would be in diagnosis, basically in decision making. The second is, improving the process efficiencies. The third is in the user interface and the patient or clinician interface with the machine. And the fourth, of course, you're looking at the, pure research like drug discovery or, training of nurses or training of technicians, etc. I mean, you can club the 4 broad areas where I do believe there is an immediate opportunity for India. But let me again come to this, again, going by my past experience. Let's take an example, right? AI in radiology. Right? Now, let's say a startup develops, we have many startups like Q.AI, etc., looking at chest X-rays and, telling you whether, there's abnormality or not. Now, that's one part of the problem. But the second part, the bigger part of the problem is how do you integrate it with the workflow in a radiology department in a hospital? Because as it is, radiologists are hugely taxed. They don't have time. Right? And 60% or 65% of the radiology imaging that happens is normal chest X-rays. And if you want the radiologist to, again, number one, break their workflow, they're not going to do it. And number two, if they're going to have 2 terminals, one terminal to look at, their existing PACS system and another terminal, they will not do it because it's a waste of time. Many of these solutions that, not just from India, I think there's a problem globally, right? The adoption is not happening to the extent that it needs to happen because people are not looking at the holistic picture to integrate it with the workflow in any hospital. That's number one. Number two is, again, if you, I mean, let me word it appropriately so that it doesn't come out wrong. Many of the large hospitals in India work with startups. I know almost all the large hospitals work with startups to solve a particular problem in the hospital. But again, it doesn't go beyond that. I mean, it doesn't go beyond that because due to various reasons, the startup either, is squeezed so much because whatever they do, they have to do free. And they don't really get the funding that is required. The clauses that they actually sign up with the hospital that they have worked with doesn't allow them, puts them in a box in terms of where all they can operate. It's just the issues that are outside of the boundary of just the AI as a technology are bigger challenges to solve, as I believe in India, rather than just looking at actually building an AI model. If you again go back, Indians are supposed to be very good at analytic thinking. They are supposed to be very good at mathematics. Right? These are the 2 foundations that are required when you're actually looking at developing an AI-based algorithm. But why is it not actually translating to what needs to be done in the because the domain expertise that is required? Because when you go to any startup, a healthcare startup, most of them have some doctor as a consultant. And if you go to a similar startup in the US, they will have a particular doctor who's full-time, a clinician, the space that they work in, who's almost full-time as part of the startup working on the problem that needs to be solved. Right? I'll give you examples of 2 startups in the US, and that's the level, and that's how we need to think. There is a startup, which actually looking at a mind-controlled bionic arm, right? And it is in a stage where probably in a couple of years, it actually would get an FDA approval. Or you have, a company called, let me not get into the name of the company, which is actually looking in the orthopedic space, which is looking end-to-end solution, whereby you actually personalize, for example, a knee joint, get a 3D printed knee joint, and automatically look at robotics to actually get the knee joint printed. right? So the thinking has to be a lot bigger. So that's one. The big aspect we spoke about it earlier, data, right? In healthcare, if you look at India, the penetration of EHR, EMRs is still very low. The standardization of data in EHR, EMR, I don't want to speak about it. It just doesn't exist, right? And even if you want to pull out that data, and if you look at most of the data that exists, across all the government hospitals, it's in, it's in paper form. It's not in electronic form. So I think one of the first things that we need to look at, it's a humongous effort. If some money can be pumped from the government into the space of converting all this non-electronic data into electronic form, right? For startups in the right form, with right consent management, right constraints, I think that would be a
tech giants. I don't want to name any, but we all know the names. But aren't they trying to do something on these lines?
But if you look at Leslie again, there could be some team in one of the tech giants working for developing a solution for the local market. But I would again ask the question: how many of these solutions have been actually very successful from a business perspective, right? And I know one tech giant, which developed a solution for the Indian market in the ICU space, which was a tele ICU with an AI backend at the, which helped actually monitor multiple patients from a central hub, a command center. This solution actually is being taken to other developed countries, right? But again, I need to frame this correctly because it shouldn't come out wrongly. Most of the tech giants are interested, to be honest with you, in developing solutions for the global market from the team sitting in India, because the expertise is amazing here, right? If the same team focuses on developing solutions for India, people are passionate about it. Let me tell you, they want to do something for India, right? But depending on the global tech giants to develop a solution just for India, I don't think that's going to happen in the near future.
No, but I mean, to be fair, I mean, some of the tech giants have done work, like say for flood, predicting floods, for instance.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Google did a great job. I understand.
Google did a great job, kind of stuff. So probably, I think you're right. I mean, probably the Bill Gates Foundation and Google and Microsoft and all, they can probably put there. So in that context, what would you say is a startup like Niramai or any of these kind of startups doing right? Whatever success that they have achieved, I know that they have not been able to scale up to the extent that they could have, perhaps, if the ecosystem had been as conducive the way you are saying it is. Should you attribute the success of these companies? What have they been doing right?
So there are a couple of things that come to mind, Leslie. I might miss out a few things, but the top of mind is, I think, the passion, behind the founders in terms of, number one, wanting to make a difference in India and staying put despite all the challenges you have for an extended period of time is probably number one. If you look at the founders of all the startups that have made it actually big in India, they've gone to the share. They've gone to the share of problems and they've somehow stayed put. That comes to funding, right? I mean, where do they get the money from, to continue, what they're doing for a long period of time? Because they also have a family. They also have aspirations in life in terms of what their children want, what their spouse. Funding, my numbers could be off a little bit, but if you look at the funding that's happened in the US for the startups in the last year, I think was 16, 17 billion. And if you look at the India number, is probably 100 million. Am I right? Correct me. So, 100 million in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I don't have. Yeah, but it's
a huge.
You can't compare the numbers.
You can't compare the numbers, right? I mean, so the second is, I think, in terms of looking at some of the startups again, the availability of data and not interacting just with a particular. I'm talking about healthcare space, not interacting just with a hospital, but interacting with multiple hospitals and having that upfront, an agreement and understanding with the hospital to say, hey, look here, This is not limited to you because I need huge amount of data. So I'm going to interact with multiple hospitals, probably the second thing. The third is, interacting with interacting globally right up front, when they're actually starting to solve the problem. Right? I mean, it's not that, you cannot your own, corner, looking that again, broaching interactions, broaching part perspective, looking at Israel, looking at the Arab countries are very open, to look at sharing data with, many of the Indian startups, looking at partnerships in the US. Probably that's the third thing that I think, the startups probably need to do well. The fourth is, again, when something is being developed for India, understanding though the regulation is very loose in India at this point in time. For example, for an AI medical device, if it's CE marked, everybody is fine in India, right? If it is FDA qualified, everybody is fine in India. But do people understand? Because again, to get an FDA approval or a CE marking, there is a huge amount of money involved, right? And understanding the regulatory space in which we are working, and upfront looking at markets where obviously you'll be able to scale and make money, and then setting that off, with the loss that probably you would make in India from a business perspective, I think is, extremely important, right? Again, passion, data, broaching partnerships, and the regulation, right? I mean, these are probably four things that I would think that startups, if they get it right, India can be in a different place 10 years down the line.
Subbu, any concluding thoughts? You must have already sensed the angst that Srinivas is going through at this point in time.
I feel, I'm sorry you saw it in me because,
it's clear.
The amount of technology power and the brain power that we have in India is amazing. Sometimes it's frustrating to see, hey, look here, why don't we just turn that into results?
Correct. There's so much more to be done.
But let me conclude on a positive note, right? The India stack is something amazing, right? The UID, having 1.1 billion Indians, having a unique number. I think that's something which is unique for us, and we need to leverage that for all sorts of services in India, right? Correct.
And they're working on the health stack anyway.
Yeah, so you're going to have a unique health ID. You're going to have a federated PHR that is planned, right? Where and also you're going to have an analytics platform, and data available there for all the startups to actually leverage, and for us to take it from there and move things forward. But again, I come back to the point, right? We need to accelerate what we are doing, and also the national health policy mooted the connection of all the government and private hospitals with a information bus, looking at it.
Hospitals, yeah.
All things said. Too late for us to wait. It's unreasonable. But the point I was trying, China and the US and European countries, we have an opportunity, but are we going to grasp it and really, have fire in our backs to actually, sprint the next 100-meter race that we're going to run? Only time can tell us.
So, your thoughts?
Subbu,
can you hear us?
Well, I think this entire AI. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I think this entire AI is not about AI. It is about our ability, willingness, to really hit the high notes. Are we going to be an AI superpower? To be very blunt, the answer is no. Not because we don't have the talent, but because I don't think we have the necessary ecosystem in place. All the AI talent is sitting in India, but developing things for someone else. So how are you going to become an AI superpower? And last thing that Srinivas said, we are making all the right noises. We've always made the right noises. You tell me one time when we haven't made the right noises. We are damn good at making right noises. but do we follow through? That's really the problem.
Yeah. So, friends, I think we have had a very.
I know it sounds very pessimistic, but then that's the reality.
Sure. So, friends, I know we have had a very kind of passionate discussion out here, and you would have sensed the angst that Srinivas, because I know personally that the way he has, worked done his own part in trying to build that kind of innovation ecosystem in India for healthcare.
For a man to move from cricket to AI would take a lot of passion.
Exactly.
Thank you, Subbu.
And I hope he doesn't
So,
regret that
yeah.
decision in the light of whatever has happened, because I think he played good cricket. He played in the AI field also, and he's got many more years to contribute to AI. And on a positive note, I think let's be clear that while AI, India may not be exactly what we call a superpower, but let's hope that it does enough to stay in the race from an applications point of view, because there's a lot more that can be done in the areas of agriculture, healthcare, education, and all the other sectors that Niti Aayog itself had sort of documented in its paper on AI in 2018. It's worth reading. I hope a lot of it gets translated into the actual thing. The health stack is a which Srinivas mentioned, is an amazing thing that this country can look forward to, because we have done a great job on UPI. I'm sure we can replicate that job in the healthcare field. And on this good note, I would like to thank Srinivas once again for his time. We hope to get you back with where hopefully things would have improved by then. So we'll get you back on the show to share your thoughts and perhaps talk a little more in depth on what more can be done. So for now, viewers, we'll take your leave. It's been a long session, we understand. Thank you for staying with us. If you like this channel, please subscribe to it, and look forward to having you next week on the show. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Leslie. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Subbu. Pleasure talking to you.